The rain had been falling hard that evening, pelting against the thin windows of the old house, when my father's roar shattered through the air. My son, Matthew, only 10 years old, had refused to scrub my sister's muddy shoes after she shoved them into his hands and barked, "Clean these, Maid boy! Mom said you're nothing but dirt anyway!" He dropped them at her feet and shook his head, his small fists trembling but his voice steady. "I'm not your servant." The sound of his defiance traveled down the hall like an alarm bell, and within seconds my father stormed in, belt in one hand, rage in his eyes. "What did I hear?" he bellowed, glaring at my son. Matthew backed up against the wall, but there was nowhere to run. "You raise him like this?" Dad hissed at me. "This brat thinks he can disobey his betters?" My sister leaned lazily on the doorway, smirking, her arms crossed. "See, Dad, he's just like her. No respect, no gratitude, no worth." Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I stepped forward, hands shaking. "He's just a child, please." But the words barely left my lips before the belt cracked against my boy's shoulder. The sound ripped through me. Matthew cried out, stumbling, his hands up to protect himself. "Stop it!" I screamed, trying to push in between, but Dad shoved me back with one powerful arm. "You want to make him useless like you? You think he'll grow into a man if he can't obey even his sister?" Another strike. And another. Until my son fell to the floor, sobbing, curling into himself as the leather struck over and over. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Dad grabbed Matthew by the collar and dragged him toward the back door. My heart stopped. "No, please, he'll get sick, it's freezing," I begged, clawing at his arm. He shoved me aside like I was nothing. The door flung open and icy rain whipped in, soaking the floor instantly. My father lifted my son as though he weighed nothing and hurled him out onto the concrete porch. Matthew landed hard, his small body skidding before he rolled into the downpour. "Better the storm deal with him than I do," Dad spat, his chest heaving. "Maybe the rain can wash the filth out." From upstairs, a cruel laugh echoed down. My sister, framed in her bedroom window, her face lit by the lamp inside, clapped her hands together like she was watching a show. "Good one, Dad. That's what happens when garbage forgets its place," she jeered, her voice loud enough to cut through the rain. My son scrambled on the ground, his hair plastered to his head, shivering violently as water streamed down his cheeks. He tried to crawl back, but Dad slammed the door shut in his face. "Let him learn," my father thundered. "Better he freezes out there than think he's equal to family." I pressed my fists against the door, sobbing, hearing my child whimper on the other side. The storm swallowing his cries. My mother appeared from the kitchen, holding a coffee mug, and without a trace of concern said, "At least the rain will do something you never could, teach him discipline." The laughter of my sister from above. The cruel sneer of my father beside me. The indifference of my mother as she sipped her drink. It was a moment burned into my soul, the night my family showed me they weren't just cruel to me. They had chosen to crush the spirit of my child too, and that was the moment something inside me broke clean in two. I looked out through the glass at my son, trembling, soaked, and utterly alone, and I swore this would never happen again, not without a price. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, staring out into the storm, watching my son curled into himself under the porch light. Every fiber in me screamed to run outside, to scoop him into my arms and shield him from the freezing rain. But every time I tried, my father's voice thundered from the living room. "Open that door, and I'll throw you out there with him. You want to freeze together? Go ahead." My hands shook so badly I pressed them against my knees to still them. Matthew's cries grew weaker as the hours crawled by, until finally, near dawn, I opened the door in silence. My boy's lips were blue, his clothes soaked through. I carried him in my arms to my room, wrapped him in every blanket I owned, and held him until his trembling slowed. He clutched my shirt in his tiny fists and whispered hoarsely, "Mom, why do they hate me?" That question carved into me deeper than any blow my father had ever struck. The next morning, my sister was waiting at the breakfast table, sipping orange juice like a queen on her throne. She smirked when she saw Matthew wrapped in my oversized coat. "Look, the maid's maid survived the rain." She tossed a soggy dishcloth at his feet. "Clean the floors, dog. Don't forget to thank me for the chance." Matthew shrank into me, clutching my arm. My father folded his newspaper and growled, "Don't protect him. He needs to learn where he belongs. Do you want him to grow up thinking he's human?" My mother gave a sharp laugh. "That child is nothing but an echo of you. Weak, useless, and constantly in the way. At least your sister's kids will bring us pride. This one, he'll drag you into the gutter." Their words swirled in my head like poison, but I stayed silent. Because silence was no longer fear. It was fuel. I started noticing things I had ignored before. My father's obsession with control. The way he hoarded old family tools in the shed, bragging they were proof this house stood on his back. My mother's pride in her glass cabinet filled with silverware and china, the only things she ever polished herself. My sister's vanity, the clothes, the jewelry, the expensive bags she paraded in front of me, always bought with money stolen from my labor. They thought. Their power over me was absolute, but every tyrant has a weakness, and I was finally learning theirs. Days passed, each one another performance of cruelty. My father forced Matthew to kneel for hours when he refused to polish my sister's boots. My mother laughed when I tried to cook dinner and shoved the pan into the trash, hissing, "Even your food tastes like failure." My sister dangled a new handbag in front of me and said, "You could never afford this, not even if you sold yourself." But instead of breaking, I began to plan. At night, when they were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with Matthew, whispering my thoughts to him as I dried his tears. "They think they own us," I murmured, "but they only own what we give them, and we're done giving." His eyes widened, a spark of hope in the exhaustion. "What are you going to do, Mom?" he asked. I pressed a finger to my lips. "Not yet, but soon." I started moving quietly, deliberately. I took note of the weak locks on the shed where Dad stored his precious tools. I memorized where my mother kept the keys to her beloved cabinet. I learned my sister's routine when she left her bags scattered carelessly around the house, bragging about how untouchable she was. They had spent years mocking me, calling me trash, forcing me to kneel, beating me down. But now, I was studying them like prey. And while they laughed from the windows and clinked glasses in the kitchen, thinking they had broken me forever, they never realized I had stopped being their victim. I was waiting for the moment I would flip the world they built upside down and make them crawl in the same dirt they dragged my son through. The night it happened, the rain had returned, almost as if the sky remembered what they had done to Matthew. My father sat in the living room polishing one of his old hammers, mumbling about tools built by real men. My mother fussed over her glass cabinet, gently wiping each silver spoon like it was royalty. My sister sat sprawled across the couch, scrolling through her phone, her designer bag tossed beside her like a trophy. They didn't notice me slip into the shadows. I had spent weeks preparing. Every item they worshipped, every little piece of their so-called power, I had mapped out. That night, I would turn it all to dust. It started in the shed. I picked the lock with shaking but steady hands and dragged out every last tool my father swore was his legacy. His saws, his drills, his rusted hammers. I stacked them outside in the rain, poured lighter fluid over the pile, and lit a match. The fire roared, crackling as flames consumed years of his pride. From inside the house, his bellow shook the walls. "My tools! What did you do?" He stumbled into the yard, eyes wide with horror, rain pelting his face as he tried to beat the fire with his bare hands. But it was useless. All that history, all that ego, turned into black ash floating into the storm. While he screamed, I moved to my mother's cabinet. I opened the glass doors and pulled out each polished piece, every fork and spoon she had spent years praising as proof she was better than me. I dropped them into a sack and walked straight to the backyard fire. When she saw, her face twisted in rage. "No, not my silver, you ungrateful wretch!" She clawed at my arms, but I shoved her back, and one by one, I tossed every piece into the flames. The silver turned dark, bending and melting, the cabinet behind her standing empty, just like her soul. My sister shrieked when she realized her bags were missing. She ran upstairs, yanking open closets and drawers, only to find bare hangers swinging in the dark. Every purse, every necklace, every pair of shoes she had lorded over me. Gone. She spun toward me, her eyes wild. "What did you do with them?" she screamed. I held up my phone. "Check your accounts. You'll find out soon enough." Her face dropped when she saw the zeros. The money she had blown on her vanity had already drained, quietly redirected to a place she would never reach. For the first time, the spoiled grin vanished. The three of them stood there, soaked from the rain and firelight, their house filled with smoke and loss. My father bellowing at the flames, my mother clutching the empty cabinet, my sister staring at her useless phone. And me? I stood tall, Matthew by my side, his small hand gripping mine. "You wanted to teach him a lesson," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Now you've learned one. Everything you value, your pride, your silver, your vanity, it's gone. Just like the love you should have given us." My father lunged at me, but his foot slipped in the mud, and he crashed to his knees. My mother tried to hold him up, sobbing over the melted silver. My sister screamed at me to fix it, but the fire only roared louder. I turned to Matthew, brushing the wet hair from his forehead. "We don't belong here anymore," I whispered. We walked out of that yard without looking back. The flames lit up the night behind us, and their voices echoed, broken, desperate, begging for what could never return. They hadn't just lost their tools, their silver, their luxury. They lost me. They lost Matthew. They lost the only chance they'd ever had to hold a real family. And that was the revenge. Not a gala, not an audience, not applause. Just three cruel people left in their own ashes, choking on the emptiness they created. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.